Good morning, all. Folks are joining us. We are at 9:45 on this rainy Friday morning. I'm here. I'm Emily Ruddick. Hello, with Mass Creative. I'm here with the team, Tracy, Selassie, and Sophia. Thanks for everyone for joining us this morning, and we are going to just dive right in. So we're going to start with some federal updates. So the CARES Act 1.5, which it is affectionately been nicknamed, is actually HR 266, and this is the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act. So as you all remember from last week, the Paycheck Protection Program dollars, as well as the EIDL dollars, ran out in 2 weeks. And so this act replenishes that amount, or replenishes both of those programs, as well as directs dollars to healthcare, to hospitals and testing. It was passed in the House yesterday in Congress, and it is being sent to the president's desk for signature today. It's expected to happen at noon. The real interesting things about this are, so $310 billion was directed towards replenishing the PPP. 60 billion of that was set aside for smaller banking institutions. So that's going to be your credit unions, smaller community banks. And the intention behind protecting a certain amount of those funds for that group was to hopefully ensure that more small businesses and nonprofits might actually have a chance at accessing those dollars. I know many of us have been frustrated with this process. And are sort of are not receiving the loans that we really desperately need. So this is one of the provisions that they've tried to put in there. I'm going to move right along. So the other piece I just want to mention about federal is that in the CARES Act, the original, the 1.0 version, there was $75 million that was allocated to the National Endowment for the Humanities. So the National Endowment for the Humanities recently released their guidelines, which are going to pop up in your chat box. And then yesterday, or 2 days ago, excuse me, Mass Humanities released their COVID-19 grant program. And you can sort of see very quickly the bulleted points about how they're hoping to allocate that money. In the chat box, you will see a link to that grant program as well. We expect that the Mass Cultural Council will, in the coming weeks, release how they are planning to re-grant out those dollars that they received from the NEA. And we also expect that the New England Foundation for the Arts will share updates about how they're going to re-grant their dollars as well. So looking at the state, we are always monitoring what bills are coming up in terms of what's being filed and what's moving. And there are 3 pieces of legislation that I want to touch on today. All 3 have been filed at this point in response to COVID-19. So the first one was filed this week. It's an act assisting nonprofits to provide for COVID-19 unemployment benefits. This bill would, as we know, many nonprofits who have not paid into unemployment, the state's unemployment fund, are now finding themselves liable for a very large unemployment reimbursement to that fund as they are having to make the difficult decision to lay off or furlough their employees. In the CARES Act, there was a provision where the feds would pick up 50% of that liability. This bill would match the federal dollars 1 for 1 so that the liability would be erased. This is a great first step. And oftentimes when we see legislation filed, we see an intent to sort of put a placeholder in, understanding that that legislation may evolve or change as it goes through the process. So we are very thankful to the co-sponsors of this bill, Chair Paul McMurtry, who's the Chair of Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development, and Representative Nika Ilaguardo. Tracy is going to talk about an action that we have that will help support this bill, but I want to let you know about that. The next one was filed by Representatives Pignatelli and Barrett from Western Mass, from the Berkshires. Their districts are in the Berkshires, and it would establish a COVID-19 nonprofit cultural organizations relief fund. They have suggested that that fund should be funded at $75 million. Important to note, that's the exact same amount that the NEA received, both the NEA and the NEH received in the CARES Act from the feds. Again, we're thinking of this really as a conversation starter, and we're very glad that there's some leadership to at least to raise the issue of the relief that's needed for creative and cultural organizations in Massachusetts. As we've talked about last week, state revenues are down, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what the state is going to be able to do. But we are following this bill. It is actually not a bill. It is still a docket, which is part of the process for a bill to become a law, if you remember your Schoolhouse Rock. So that is something we're following and keeping track of. And as it evolves, we will let you know what's going to happen next. And then finally, Senator Eldridge on the Senate, obviously on the Senate side, filed a bill that would make COVID-19 a qualified claim for business interruption insurance. This is important because, you know, many of us organizations that have business interruption insurance would be able to find some relief if they were able to file a claim on this. And I don't think this is going to come as a surprise. There was an article a couple weeks ago nationally and in the Commonwealth. There's some pushback from the insurance industry around this. It would set a precedent about how government can, frankly, rewrite policies. So we're following this with some caution, and as it develops, we will let you know how we can engage. Finally, the budget process. As I mentioned last week, revenues are, and mentioned already today, revenues are down and forecasted to continue to go down as we are sheltering in place. Excuse me, that's not the right word, as we are voluntarily self-quarantining and practicing social distancing. So there is an expectation that soon-ish, the legislature will sort of release how they plan on going through the budget process this year. I think I'm going to become a broken record. We should expect that this will be a budget process unlike what we usually expect. I think this is a moment where I want to remind you that oftentimes advocacy alerts get put out fast and furiously, and we are responding to what we're hearing from our colleagues and our partners. So I hope you will all continue to stay alert and engage on this when we put out the call, and share opportunities to advocate with your networks and your communities. Finally, 2 items. So this week during his press conferences, Governor Baker announced that he is closing schools and non-essential daycare centers for the rest of the school year. Obviously, that has a major impact in terms of young people and their ability to access quality education. It's something that we're thinking about and working with the Arts for All Coalition, of which we are a member, and hoping to make some recommendations about how we can help young people and arts teachers in this moment. We also, I just want to say and put out there and acknowledge that many of us are doing double and triple duty as both homeschooling our kids, working full-time jobs, and trying to keep their households going. And that takes an emotional toll. But these are the common sense and in fact necessary public health decisions that are made to keep us all safe. The other piece is that when asked a question by a reporter, Governor Baker said that about reopening the Commonwealth and restarting the economy in Massachusetts, he said that he is looking to assemble a group of academics, public health, and business leaders to create a thoughtful framework for the reopening of the Commonwealth. We are working, as soon as we saw that, we started working diligently to advocate that the creative sector be included in any sort of task force or working group that is put together. We are making some direct asks to the administration around that issue, and we'll also be looking to work with our legislative partners and champions to make sure that when we're talking about reopening the Commonwealth, the creative community and the gathering economy are certainly well represented. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. Thanks all. Tracy, did we lose you?
I'm here. All right, so just like last week, I want to give you 3 things. We obviously want to share information with you, but then we want to give you an opportunity to take action, since that is our role as your statewide arts advocacy organization. So Emily is going to take me through these slides.
Great.
Okay, so here are just easy actions that you can take right now. For those of you who've taken action with us before, you're familiar with our online tool that allows you to put in your information, your zip code, edit an already formatted email, and send it to your legislators. We have several of our actions set up in that way, and then as other actions of our partners have come online, we want to share those with you. The easy actions that you can take right now is reaching out to your member of Congress. It's also reaching out to your state legislators. As Emily mentioned, we have a new action alert on unemployment assistance, unemployment insurance assistance for nonprofits. We have an action alert set up. And then we also want folks to share their economic impact story. So data is really important right now to be able to make our case and to be able to distribute these funds equitably. So we are partnering with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture in the city of Boston to do a survey to creative workers and artists so that the funds, at least through the city, are being distributed equitably. If you go to our website and you go to the COVID-19 dropdown, that will allow you to go through these different actions. There's buttons that say, reach out to your members of Congress, reach out to your state legislators, so you can click through those pieces. In addition to that, there's a new button that says other ways to take action. So we know that for a lot of you that you're used to taking our online actions, you're more sophisticated, you're kind of on the advanced level of an advocate. And so we want to provide more opportunities for you to engage on these issues right now. Okay, so these additional actions are to attend virtual coffee and office hours held by your state legislator. So again, if you go to our drop down and go to advocacy and go through additional actions, it will bring you to a page that has links to a Google form. And apologize that we can't share with you right now. But Sophia, our fabulous intern, has helped to put together the virtual coffee and office hours that are being held by state legislators. So not everyone is doing this, and more are coming online. So make sure you're checking in on that Google document often. This is a great opportunity to engage with your legislator just at this time, not just about arts and cultural issues, but introducing yourself as a constituent and engaging with them. And it's also an opportunity to make your voice heard on issues that you really care about, including the creative community. So in that Google Doc is a ton of really great resources. It has your legislator's email address, their Facebook, their Twitter accounts, so you can engage with them in that way. And then as more of these coffee and office hours come online, you can attend those. They're happening through Facebook Live, through Instagram Live, and then also through Zoom as well. So we just encourage you to go and do those and to use our resources to help you feel more prepared for that. An additional action that you can take is writing a letter to the editor. So we know media is really important right now and always. And so it's another way to get your opinions out there about how we should, as we start thinking about reopening the economy and reimagining our world and our reality, arts and culture and arts education should be considered by our elected officials. So we have some sample letters to the editor and some tips on how to submit those. So in both of these, since they're a little bit more sophisticated actions, we want to make sure that you're really good at telling your own personal story. So again, on that other ways to take action button, there is a tips for storytelling, which for any of you who've come to our statewide arts advocacy days, where we march from the Paramount to the State House. You've been through this training before. You've seen this worksheet. We adapted this so that it goes through the I am, before, then I, and now in the context of COVID to help you share. It's basically a worksheet to help you prep to share your story, either when you're emailing your legislator, where you're attending a coffee or an office hour, or in writing your letter to the editor. And then the last piece, which is to come online soon, is we're organizing some legislative listening sessions outside of these coffee and office hours done by legislators. So look out for those dates coming soon. In the works. All right, so then the very last thing that I want to share with you is other ways to take action. This is a refresher for those of you who were with us last week. We know that there's lots of ways to support community right now outside of advocacy, so we want to also provide those resources for you. So in that link, which Selassie is putting in the chat box and will be in follow-up materials, there's lots of ways, there's additional links on ways to donate, volunteer, and create community. And as always, if you have additions that we should be adding to this resource page, please let us know. All right.
Okay, we are trying to stay to our 15-minute deadline or timeline. So thank you all for joining us today. If you have questions, put them in the chat box and we will follow up in our Q&A when we send this recorded webinar out to the field and to the general public. If you've got specific pieces of feedback you'd like to share with either Tracy or I, you can see our emails are right up there, as well as engage with us on social media. And finally, our next 15-minute update will be next week, same bat time, same bat channel. I'm very excited to use that phrase. So everyone, have good weekends. Please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Try to get a little outdoor time if you haven't. And we are so glad for all of you coming together and joining in our collective advocacy efforts. We're only as strong as our collective voices. So thank you and have a wonderful day. Thanks, team Mass Creative. Bye all.